Thank you. Okay, Stephanie Medley, please.
Yep.
Tina Reyes. Tina, are you there?
I'm here.
Okay, thank you. LaShante Smith.
Here.
Ellen McDonald.
Brandon Banks here as Ellen's proxy.
Okay, great. Thank you, Brandon. Simon O'Connell.
He's on his way.
Okay, thank you. Alicia Jackson. Michael Pearson. Cheryl Sudduth. Okay, great. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Denise. And now we'll open it up to the public to introduce themselves, starting with who's in the room. And we'll start with
Cheryl Ray with the Office of Supervisor Candace Anderson.
thank you.
Patrice Gillard here with the Office of Reentry Justice.
And for folks on Zoom, if you could please introduce yourself, starting with Christopher.
Good afternoon, everyone. Chris James with the W. Haywood Burns Institute.
Hello, my name is Khadijah Phillips. I'm here representing my organization, Kalila's Heart, as well as supporting my mother, Beverly Moore.
Stephanie.
My name's Stephanie Tanio. I'm a concerned county resident. Here to listen.
Thank you. Beverly.
I'm Beverly Moore. I wanted to talk to you guys about eminent domain property that was taken from me by the city of Richmond.
Thank you. And we'll open it up for public comment in just a bit. Michelle.
Hi, my name is Michelle. I'm from Where's My Land, and I'm here in support of Beverly Moore as well.
Thank you all so much. And welcome again to the Diversion Subcommittee. Right now, we'll open it up for public comment on any items that are not on our agenda, but are within our domain.
Okay, I can go. My name is Beverly Moore, and I used to own the property at 502 Enterprise, Richmond, California, 94801. I had purchased the property from my mother, and in 1993, it was taken by eminent domain and given a very small fee. I've been working with the Where's My Land organization and also the city of Richmond, trying to get my land returned. They said they had to offer it to a nonprofit. My family, my daughter and I, we have a nonprofit, Kalila's Heart, and we haven't been able to get it that way. The communication has stopped. The last communication I had with them was May 3rd, 2023. We were supposed to be getting back together on June 7th, which was my birthday, but we didn't. We recently sent emails, made several calls. Initially, they wanted me to get some discrepancies as far as how large the plot was, and I went to Martinez and got the paperwork and sent it in. So I'm doing everything I can, and the community, the land is being destroyed with homeless people and tents and trash. And I want to get my property back because it was taken because it was supposed to have been used for drainage for the Richmond Parkway Freeway, and they never used that. And it's been dormant laying ever since. And I want to get my property. We were very influential in the community. All of us are still friends after 65 years later. And my mom had a beautiful garden, and we would barter, and our life changed once the property was taken. We didn't have the home to go back to. So things happened in our lives. The sister homeless and brothers going to jail. I myself had issues too, but by the grace of God, I've been in recovery for 31 years. And I just want to see how can I get my land back so I have something to give to my grandkids, because it was my land. I paid for it for my mom. They took it and didn't compensate us as they should. But anyway, I don't want to go so deep into But that's why I'm here. And you guys are working with racial injustices. And I feel like it was partially because I was a single African-American female and I didn't have any support. So I'm looking for support. I'm looking to get the land back. Thank you guys for listening.
Thank you, Beverly, and thank you so much for sharing your story. And I'm so sorry that you have to go through that. A couple of things. So with our committee, we're part of the Racial Justice Oversight Body, and we specifically look at things that are happening in the criminal legal system. And this particular committee focuses on diversion programs, looking at what diversion programs are in the county. So we don't oversee anything that has to do with property or things like that. What I will just open it up to is if anybody on the committee may have some suggestions maybe for Beverly. I don't know if anybody may have some suggestions, but I'll open it up to our committee members and maybe Jill, if you have any suggestions.
It's in the city of Richmond, so.
I'm sorry, we can't hear you.
So, since it's within the city of Richmond, I don't know any county resources that could help with that. I would volunteer. Supervisor Julia. And would volunteer.
Do you guys know of any like legal services that maybe we can consult with pro bono? I contacted the NAACP and different organizations. We're trying on that end, but Richmond stated they were working with us. We were going to get our land, but we're at a standstill. So we just don't know which way to go. What is the hope of that?
Bay Area Legal Aid doesn't handle things like eminent domain, but they may know resources that they could direct you to. Maybe if you could drop an email, or if your daughter or Michelle could drop an email in the chat, and I can get that from you afterwards and see if I can make some connections for you.
Thank you.
You're
What's
welcome.
your name again?
My name is Stephanie.
Okay. And what's your title, Stephanie?
I'm the chair of this committee, but I work at Rise Center in Richmond, and I'm the youth justice director there.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
I'm sorry, I don't see a chat option.
There's a Q&A box, and if you can't utilize that, if you do have a copy of the agenda, my contact is listed there at the bottom. You can send your email address to that email address that's listed there. My name is Patrice Guillory with the Office of Reentry and Justice.
Okay, I see the Q&A. I'm putting the email addresses in there. Thank you so much.
Okay, are there any other public comments?
Did you want to comment? I was trying to see if my daughter wanted to add to what I was saying. Khadijah?
No, I think I'm okay. I think that you stated very well what we were here for, and I'm looking forward to the follow-up with the resources.
Thank you.
Hey, thank you all. So seeing that we don't have any more comments, we're going to move on to our next agenda item, which is the approval of our record of action. And we'll open it up for discussion from our committee members if there are any edits, comments to the record of action. Seeing there are none, we'll move and open it up to the public for any comments or corrections on our record of action. Okay, and there are none, so I will open it up to receive a motion to approve our record of action. Thank you, Aaron. Thank you. So we have a motion from Tina Reyes. And can we get a second, please? And we have a second from Brandon. Okay. Okay.
Thank you, Stephanie. That's helpful. I'll call the vote now. Tina? LaShante?
Yes.
Brandon?
Yes.
Is Simon in yet? Okay. Cheryl
Yes, I am.
and Stephanie.
Yes,
Okay, the motion passes.
thank you. Moving on to our next agenda item, which is our discussion and to finalize adult eligibility criteria.
Stephanie,
Yes.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but Chris has been waving his arms wildly to gather our attention.
I mean, I don't know if I would say wildly. I feel like I
Well,
was, but just trying to, get your attention. So because Simon isn't there, it seems like we might want to move this agenda item down just a bit and maybe come back to it once he gets there, because we would be talking about the diversion eligibility criteria. And to the extent that there are statutory necessities and all that sort of stuff, he'd be able to answer questions if questions come up about that. So I don't want to have that conversation without him.
Thank you. Yeah, that's a good call, Chris. I kind of forgot that Simon was a part of that group. So we will wait for Simon to arrive. Hopefully that'll be soon. And we'll move on to the review of our work plan. And I'll turn it over to Chris to walk us through that.
You volunteered yourself into.
You sure did.
Chris, do you want screen access?
Sure.
Or do you want me to pull it up? Either way is fine.
Either way works for me too.
Okay,
If
let
it's
me
easier
see.
for you to do it, yeah, you can go for it.
Okay, let me see if I can find it. Page 6, right? Okay. Okay. Is this what we wanted? Page 6? No, page 8.
No.
I'm
Yeah.
sorry. Excuse me. Here we go. All
Here
right.
we are. Yeah, so what we want to do with all of the subcommittees within the next couple of meetings is go through the work plans. We'll be myself along with ORJ will be looking to help each subcommittee as well as the body itself prioritize work plan items as we've been asked to do by the equity committee, and to report back on that, and to sort of try to target certain items that are on this work plan that we think we can actually move, right? That's always the struggle, because there are so many things that come up, so many pieces to all of these different objectives, so on and so forth. But these are all written, literally like pulled, yanked directly from the RJTF's recommendations. That's Racial Justice Task Force. I'm sorry, just in case anybody doesn't know that acronym. And if those words don't mean anything to you, the Racial Justice Task Force was a group much like the Racial Justice Oversight Body, and includes many of the same members that are now on the Racial Justice Oversight Body, who originally met to develop a list of recommendations that needed to be implemented at the county level to achieve a level of racial equity. And the Racial Justice Oversight Bodies, charge, and this is the Racial Justice Oversight Body that is currently meeting, right? Their charge was to implement those recommendations, right? So what we're always trying to do is see how to actually make good on the things that the RJTF, so I think adroitly recommended that we do or focus on. And so there's a whole list of recommendations. They are mostly broken out into sort of three categories that make up the three subcommittees that we have, right? So there's data, diversion, and community engagement and funding. Because this is the diversion subcommittee, we're looking at the diversion subcommittee work plan. And I think this is all pretty straightforward stuff. Objective one is to form a committee to make diversion recommendations countywide, which is, that one was accomplished some years ago now, right? The committee exists. We're not wanting to stop at or hang our hats on or brag about the fact that we have an existing committee, right? That was a very low-lying fruit. And so now we want to take some very active steps toward achieving some of these other objectives, including objective 2, which is developing separate recommendations for adult and youth populations in terms of diversion usage. And so part of that is eligibility criteria, which is why, now given sort of the pivot that we've been able to make, we have an opportunity to actually move part of this. We've done a review of existing county diversion programs and policies, quite some time ago. And I think, I would welcome any additional programs. And I think we've already had, some additional organizations that are going to be even working with the ORJ, in our last meeting to speak about, the organization and what, that program might look like. So, I think that can be an ongoing review, but it is a review that, like, in principle, right, we did many years ago. Also had a presentation about best practices and some examples, and even developed some recommendations, I think in the form of guidelines, right, for how diversion was to be used. That we finalized that at the R job level, and I think we just brought it back for review at the last R job full body meeting. I don't know that we got too deep into that conversation because we ended up having to cut it short. But looking at objective 2, we are well on our way toward completion of objective 2, which is not necessarily the way that I came into this conversation kind of feeling about it, but based on the language that's there, I think we have done some significant work there over the years, and that's worth noting. The next objective is to try to ensure the broadest possible pool of eligible participants, right? So this is a particular spot where that eligibility criteria comes in. And obviously, as most of you know, and as the agenda item that we will hopefully get back to shortly, outlines, we have had a series of conversations up to this point about about adult diversion in particular, and the eligibility criteria there, particularly the offense types that would be eligible for diversion, and trying to develop a criteria in such a way that we ensure the broadest possible pool, like the objective says in the work plan, but also to ensure that we are not exacerbating or creating any adverse effects or impacts on communities of color that we know are disproportionately represented in the system as it currently stands. So that work has been underway, but then we paused, of course, and now we're looking to hopefully with this conversation, like, finalize the adult diversion criteria so that we can move on to the youth population and do the same process. And really, the conversations to a large degree have been held. They were just held so long ago that before we, decided that we wanted to move this particular item forward or those particular criteria forward, I just wanted everybody to get to take a second look at it. If you had any questions, for Simon, representing the DA's office, and again, having a sense of, the statutory requirements as far as certain offenses and, diversion eligibility or not, to be able to speak to those directly, so that everybody's clear on what the criteria are for the adult population. We can move on to youth. I would love to, I'm not going to rush us, but I would love to, if not by the end of this year, certainly by very early next year, be moving, the criteria forward for both populations, because we've had the necessary conversations, whether that's in a work group, whether that's in working meetings, among this entire group, as well as, of course, the full body, to consider what's being proposed, to make revisions or edits, ask questions, get them answered, and then move that objective forward. And I mean, I could do this for all of the rest of them on the page, but it might take a significant period of time.
Hey, Chris, perfect drop of my name right when I landed. That was awesome. So good to see everybody. And I know Brandon apologized for me, but thank you. I will be better on directions and not rely on prior precedents. Hey, Chris, I would even say we could probably move up, and not to move off of the topic of adult diversion today, but I really think we could move up the timeline on juvenile. I mean, with what we're doing with restorative justice, Brian and Stephanie already, I don't think it would be a prolonged conversation or launch, and that could be done. We're always looking to be mindful of our larger hard job discussion last month about let's hit our deliverables. If we expect others to hit deliverables, let's go ahead and make that an objective for this year, because I, for one, and speaking for Dinah, know that we could do it.
So I hear you. I appreciate the enthusiasm. Sounds good to me. I'm going to remind you that it is October. It is like mid to late October. So, that's the only reason that I'm saying maybe early next year, because we only have a couple of meetings left, like literally a couple, right? As this subcommittee, unless there's going to be a special session, or we're going to do some, we're going to go back to the work groups, which is definitely possible, and I'm certainly open to it. Just depends on everyone else's availability. So I don't want, us to feel like we really lost an opportunity or something if we're not done by December. And I mean, realistically, depending on when in December this meeting is scheduled, you guys aren't going to want to be here. You're going to want to be with your families and whatnot, and people are going to, we'll maybe have an issue with quorum and all of that. And that is just par for the course. That's how it goes. So that's not a knock to anyone. That's just what happens at that time of year. So just keeping that in mind. But certainly if we can expedite it, I am happy to do it. However I can help or support, and however we can coordinate to make sure that happens as soon as possible, let's do it.
And it's probably because it's 90 degrees outside and I jogged to my car that I forgot we are October the 18th. So I'll walk back a step or two, but let the minutes reflect. The district attorney's office proposed this, we get juvenile back.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Chris.
Yeah, no problem. And it's just part of the work everywhere that I'm working, is to sort of look at where we are on the calendar and then say, okay, what realistically can we accomplish? Let me just check something really quickly. Never mind. I think we might as well go through the last page of this really quickly. I'll just try not to be my natural verbose self and to wrap it up pretty quick. So Objective 4, we want to make sure that prior involvement with the criminal legal system doesn't bar a person from eligibility for diversion. And I think that is something that we have covered in the guidelines. I'm certainly open to adding information to that sort of preamble that we, were presenting to, or would have presented to the full body, if we need to put more language directly to that to ensure that that doesn't become an issue, or at least that we're speaking to it as a committee, as an advisory body in the county. And then we have, LaShante in the house, right? Because she's an Our Job member first and foremost, but also like she, has done a lot of work and sort of spearheaded the work that has been happening on our end from Objective 5, right? So that's providing resources to incentivize and provide schools with non-punitive discipline practices such as positive behavior in schools and restorative justice, as well as behavioral health and early intervention services for youth. Now, there is a part of this, there's an activity on this objective that we added, and that is, taking some time and probably isn't finished yet, right? As these were structured, I think one of the things that we left off, but that was a really good catch and something that I think this body does a good job of lifting up, is that there's a need. If we're talking about schools, if you check the average age of, I'm turning 35 tomorrow, folks. Like we're not children. So we need to talk directly to young people, right? And so what LaShante had been working on and coordinating was a pilot of listening sessions within schools, right? To talk directly to and hear directly from young people about what they need, right? Before we're providing resources or incentivizing anybody to do anything, we probably need to know like how do we respond directly to the needs of the young people who are going to directly benefit or directly not benefit very much at all from whatever those resources and programs are. And so that's where Objective 5 is right now. Objective 6 is a big one, right? This is a big sort of more of a long-term thing, at least the way that I think of it, because it is a big deal. But creating the formal partnerships and I would say more formal partnerships with community-based organizations to provide greater capacity for diversion, right? We know that though that type of programming and service being housed in community and being rolled out in ways with people and organizations that folks can trust is really important to their effectiveness. And so we would want to, be a part of making sure that community-based organizations have the resources and, the direct pathways to become those referral sites, right? So, and thereby they become pathways out of the system, right? So as opposed to incarceration, see, so-and-so community organization right around the corner from you to, get some services, some programming in response to, whatever the needs are that may have led to, this level of involvement, right? And so wanting to see more of that, and how do we go about actually building the partnerships that are going to build those referral pathways and to build more of them where we can. So I think that covers the work plan overall, but that one, that Objective 6, there hasn't been a whole lot of work on because it is a big one.
Thank you, Chris. So we'll open it up now to the committee for discussion. I think one of the things that's sticking out to me right now, first of all, as a committee, we've done a lot. I know sometimes it doesn't seem like it, but actually just kind of going through our work plan, we have put in a lot of work and trying to put things together. And we talked a little bit about this during our full committee meeting last time. I think one of the areas that we really need to work on is how are we actually sharing with the community about the things that we're doing and actually getting feedback from them. So one of the things that popped out to me is like we have this kind of what we think diversion should look like in the county, but I also think it can be beneficial to get feedback from the community on that language that we came up with. And I also think this is a place where we could connect more with the Community Engagement Committee to figure out what that actually looks like to bring community in or go to community to get that feedback from them. So those are a couple of things that just popped up for me.
I think that sounds great, and I'm just gonna put in a plug, since you said that, Stephanie, for the fact that I sent a relatively late email, like after hours email, last night, I think, trying to coordinate between, the full body chairs, like the chairs of the RJOB at large, as well as each subcommittee chair, to have one planning meeting where we do all of that sort of agenda planning and development, which would allow for a lot more of that collaboration and coordination between the subcommittees, and certainly open the lines of communication, while also maybe making for less places that you guys all have to show up, including myself. So, just you're one of the like 4 or 5 people that would be involved in that, Stephanie, but just plug in that, if that's something that you can do, I think that would help to structure that sort of partnership and that sort of collaboration in terms of how do we get this information out to community in spaces and in places and even in ways that are digestible, that are relatable, and that really get the word out and get some good feedback.
And yes, I will be responding. I think it's a real good idea.
So what I would say here, while we're waiting to see if there are any other folks, and if there were any hands up in person and I just can't see them in my tiny box, I apologize. I don't mean to step on anyone. I think, so objective 3 is clearly one that we're targeting to, Simon says end of the year, pun intended, right? But like, if not end of the year, within the next, 3 to 4 months, right? We're looking at, sort of trying to wrap objective 3 in terms of, at least in terms of the eligibility criteria.
Chris.
Oh, am I speaking to the wrong objective? I'm sorry.
No. I just wanted to say, I actually think that it wouldn't be, I kind of agree, well, I don't know if we can actually have everything completed by the end of the year, but I do think that the lift won't be that heavy for youth criteria. And I think we could at least get a quick meeting in to kind of go over some things, not the full subcommittee,
Yeah, I got
but our work group to just kind of go over it. And if we do decide, right now, I think we have a meeting on the calendar, at least in my calendar for some reason, I have a meeting tentatively for December 14th for the subcommittee. And if we keep that, I think we could potentially like go over these criteria then.
I love it. All right. So yeah, that's I think that one in particular is top of mind to move. And I don't know, man, now that I'm looking at objective 3 and in particular looking at these the activities here, right? So some of the language that we created, speaks directly to, these formal requests for data, the lack of data right now, wanting to do something in the meantime, and to do that with the full intent to come back when there is that data to review it all and ensure, that we're not exacerbating or creating any sort of, equity issues with the application. And then it also speaks to less the activities, I guess, but more like the overall language of objective 2, right, which is these separate recommendations for adult and youth populations. So it's kind of a hybrid 2-3 sort of item for us to work on that could, really kind of at least begin to check the box on both of those objectives. And that's something that, within a relatively, near time frame, we could be, well on our way toward finalizing. So I just wanted to point that out, and also point out objective 5 again, or highlight objective 5, because some of that work has been underway. Whereas and even 4, right, like at least in terms of the formal recommendation, I think that's there, but we can strengthen it if we need to. And that would leave objective 6, which again is the large undertaking that seems like more of a long-term strategy to work on. So just wanted to point out sort of the timeline and prioritization, at least the way that it seems right now. If there's a need to shift or pivot, or anybody has any feedback on that, would love to hear it.
Chris. Everybody got. I've been struggling with this part because I know I mentioned this probably last year or a year before in this community. I'm through the plan, except for I'm still feeling like all of these work starts was there's a problem. And as I mentioned before, I think diversion work has to start with keeping them out of the system in the first place. So, for the people on the line, it's Cheryl, 7. And so I think that this is my struggle. I think that there's just something missing here to keep these children out of the system in the first place. So my definition of diversion is, how do we divert them from the system in the first place, is what I'm sorry, with the school system. So if all of our work is always, once they're in the pipeline, they're in the pipeline, period. And so now your work is, how do we stop recidivism? How do we stop being there from the baby prison to big prison? I mean, it's, as a parent, these scars me to preschool, not slapping another one in the face and saying, I want that toy because I want that toy. He's teaching them that at a very young age. We're children, you know this, right? He's teaching those tools. So when I just on my podcast on Monday, I was talking to a gentleman who has a program called Peacekeepers. And he was talking about this very concept of how do we teach children to be peacekeepers and carry that concept with them throughout their life. And he works with children who have this tendency to want to lash out, and those who have already been in the system and working to keep these out of the system, who might have these tendencies to want to be prone towards violence, those who've already acted on it, and those who are coming out of the system, and teaching them this methodology for peacekeepers. So I would like to see us try and bring that type of attitude where we are working on how do we teach children. We're going to start talking about youth and juvenile right now. How do we keep them in that mode of having that kind of mindset, rather than the opposite of that is, I just want to stay out of jail. Do you see what I mean? There's a difference between I just want to stay out of the criminal and legal system, rather than I want to live a life built on positivity and peace, and that I am worthy, and that I have more to offer. Then I just don't want to go to jail. There's a different mindset. And I think that when I look at this, the mindset that I see is that I don't want to be this, rather than I can be something else. And so that's what I'm struggling with. Is can we flip this around and say, these are the opportunities that are available to you, rather than, well, we don't want you to do this part because these are the negatives. Either way, we can flip it around and say, here are the positive things that we can work with you on. And the way we can work with you on is that we're going to teach you how to take command of those negative forces that are in your life and turn them into positive. That's what I would like to see from the youth side. By the time they become adults, it's a little harder to deal with. But on the juvenile side, I really would like us to teach them how to work through to see that there's some positivity that they can work towards. If we work from a potentialist standpoint versus you got too much going on, then I think we can help them a little more. That's all I wanted to say. I'm a mentor, so this is what I do. That's it. You can put it like that. So they can hear me. They gotta hear me if I do this.
Can you hear me? Oh. No, I agree with what you're saying, and I think what we see in the school system is, there isn't true diversion, if you will, in our school system. So what happens is students engage in a varying level of different types of behavior. And yes, you have like restorative justice practices that I wouldn't say are type of fidelity. You have these short-term restorative justice kind of practices that are done in the school. But then when we have students who are repeating behaviors, you start to see a trend, and unfortunately, what our system turns to is suspension, and then we turn to expulsion. But what I've noticed is that those same students, once they are expelled from school, put into a county program, they come back through probation, right back into our system, right? And so there is this clear connection between this push out, right? Because students are lacking what I would say are basic services in schools to address the serious behaviors we see. And we are seeing very serious behaviors. We're seeing, we're seeing weapons, we're seeing fights within the public and all of this stuff. But there's not true diversion at that point. We wait until they're kind of pushed down and into these different programs. And again, like I said, there's this clear connection back to now I'm out of school. I'm not connected to the community at all. The school, this academic environment. So I'm doing whatever I have to do to survive. And then they engage in more behaviors that then gets them back to our system, but through another way. But then when they're coming back through probation, now it's like, okay, well, we could do this or that, or they have this other type of support, but it's just a pattern. And so for the last 2 years, I've just been watching this pattern, and it's the same students, and it's just repeated. But if we look from the beginning, there was clear steps that we could have taken, but I don't think that schools, we haven't built a system for what that really looks like in extreme cases of behavior. And I was talking to Stephanie. I'm going on a little rant, I'm so sorry. But I was talking to Stephanie, and I was telling her that we see students with very serious offenses at this like expulsion level. And so what would like diversion look like at the expulsion level, where students have committed these super serious things in school, right? That then is okay. Well, by ed code, we have to give them another program, or they're expelled from our system, they go into this kind of program. But right at that moment, what would it look like for them? What would it look like to do restorative justice there? And to say, we're going to put you on this path. We're going to give you this type of service to where you're going to be accountable to, community, to the folks that have been harmed in the process. But if you do this, right, then you still have an opportunity to still be within our system and be supported. But if it doesn't happen there, then it continues with the push out, and then eventually you start to see more.
And I think that, what both of you are saying, like, we talked a lot about the prevention intervention aspect of things too, and that's something that we haven't really kind of taken a deeper look at. And especially like in the schools, and I think it was before the pandemic now, is that when we went to DC?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, that was one of the focuses for the DA's office, the printer's office, the school district, and then with Rise, I feel like somebody else was there too. But it was really looking at how do all of these systems partner, because unfortunately, we're all kind of being pulled together in this space. Oh, probation was there as well. Yeah, how do we actually kind of work at this different level instead of when it gets to, okay, we're getting ready to file charges or whatever. And prevent things there. And then also look at what are some of the other prevention intervention services that maybe some of the system partners can look at to figure out even what this funding looks like for schools, whether it's like mindfulness, whatever. And I think we should maybe think about like over this coming year, is that something that we actually focus more on and put more effort into? And also not forget about Antioch. Well, East County period, but I do think Antioch could potentially be a good place to look at some of, like, how some of that work looks like in that area.
You said something, just.
I'll go with the protocol.
Okay.
One of the things that bothers me is that, you know, there's this feeling that there's no consequences. And when I talk to community, when I talk to parents, there's no feeling of the young people just don't have a feeling of consequences. I get caught, all right, whatever, you're gonna see this, I'll be back on the street, whatever. And so I just know growing up, if there was some consequences, whatever it is, there's some consequences. I just remember my grandmother say, you can do what you want to do, but there's a repercussions, consequences, direction, right? Whatever that repercussions and consequences is. So you always had that hanging over your head or in your ear. Now, I never knew what the repercussions and consequences was. It just sounded bad, right? And so I was gonna be good because I could hear my grandmother's voice, I could hear my mom's voice in my head. There's repercussions and consequences. I didn't know what. It just sounds really bad, repercussions and consequences. But when you don't, when there's like an empty threat of it and nothing happens when you do something. And to me, it's a simple thing. Like I remember when my cousins, my brothers went out and they took something from a store. You know what those repercussions and consequences were? Not only do you have to take it back, you're gonna pay the store owner, then you're gonna work in that store. And this is like in the, I think they were late 80s. This wasn't in the 50s. This was like not that long ago. So when somebody's busting windows, they're breaking cars, they're taking people's stuff. My definition of diversion is, okay, you know, I'm not gonna put you in jail, but you like busting windows? Okay, you like busting windows? Here's what you're gonna do. My people, let me tell you what you're gonna do. Like busting windows, take you down here to these window shops where they fix windows. You're gonna come in here and you're gonna learn how to fix the damn windows. So now I'm gonna give you a trade. I'm gonna show you what it's like when windows get busted. You like busting windows? That lady whose car you bust, she can't use her car anymore. You're gonna come over here and you're gonna work with her for X number of hours. Do you like busting windows? You're gonna carry her groceries because now she can't go to work, now she can't carry her groceries, now she can't take her children to school. There was a man, this video is going around the internet about his daughter. My brother just told me, his 10-year-old daughter was bullying. Did you guys see this? Mm-hmm. You saw it, right? She was bullying children at school, and he found out about it. He made his daughter walk 5 miles to school. Now he rode in the car behind her to make sure she got there. She came home, she said, Dad, you have to take me to school from now on. He said, why? She got kicked off the bus for bullying. And he said, she gonna learn today. And he posted on TikTok, and he drove behind her, and he got her new pair of shoes, he put her backpack on her, and he made her walk to school. He made her walk to school. There's repercussions and consequences. She gonna learn today. This is what I'm talking about. There's my version of diversion. It doesn't have to be harsh things. Oh, you wanna steal cars? Oh, you wanna steal cars? Oh, I see, you wanna steal catalytic converters? Oh, okay, you know what your punishment gonna be? You will come on over here to these Ford, Toyota, Kia, whatever, and you're gonna learn how to install a catalytic converter. You're gonna spend you 120 hours, and you're gonna learn what it takes to install catalytic converters. And then you're gonna go over here, that's your first part of your punishment. Second part is, because you disabled this lady's car, she can't get to work, she can't take her children, she can't do X, Y, Z. So now you're gonna put in some hours doing this. Or you're gonna go work with these, and you beat up this old person, okay, now you gotta go over here and work with elderly people. Now you gotta do, and a lot of you have that kind of punishment. And, oh, and you like filming yourself, stealing cars. Now you're gonna film yourself going over here, put on these hip boots and pick up poop. Picking up poop out of the reservoir or the creek or whatever. You like being a internet superstar, right? You like being a TikTok, okay?
What's your punishment?
Oh, we don't, you like my but it's that kind of what you do. And so that's the kind of conflict and repercussions you do. You like breaking into people's stores, huh? Oh, okay. And then film yourself breaking into people's stores, okay, big man, this is what we're gonna do. We're gonna break you into these wastewater treatment plants. You know, I'm in wastewater treatment plant. We're gonna put you in here with all this poop. And we're gonna let you learn. And then if you learn a new trade, you're gonna learn what it takes to work hard. And you're gonna learn what other people, that costs people money every time you do. This is what I'm talking about. That's diversion. Diversion is not sitting around a table because they don't want to do anything anyway. Now, you're gonna pay back society for the harm that you did. And I'm not gonna send you to baby jail because that's probably where you wanna go. No, you want to get some work done. Eat some elbow grease. That's what I'm looking for. I'm complete.
Hey Cheryl, you and I are not that far apart on the need for consequences for anybody for understanding that if you do something, there's a repercussion and consequence for it. You know why drug court failed? Because the repercussions and consequences were more significant than somebody just saying throw me in jail. So what we used to have in drug court, Brandon and I were young in our office, there were penalties if I was a drug user. The idea was a sticking carrot approach. The carrot was, you have a drug problem, sir. We'd like to get you in treatment. If you'll do treatment, you'll get no conviction and you'll get no penalty. And I would say, well, what's the penalty if I don't want to do treatment? They said, it's a minimum of 30 days in jail. Then we decided as a state, that's not right to punish people for having an addiction. There shouldn't be a minimum sentence that is imposed. So once people, and this is, no one's to blame for this is just how this came about. Once we took away punishment for being a drug abuser, I like drugs. Drugs make me feel good. I like who I am when I'm on drugs. It's an escape from my other realities and problems. If you're telling me now there's no consequence for the crime, why do I want to do treatment? And so one of the difficulties that we have with diversion as well is that we can't make the consequences and repercussions more onerous than what the penalty would be. Because there are some people that are like, hey, I like the idea of learning the trade. I would like to learn how to fix glass windows, and maybe I could one day have my own small business. That sounds great. But there are 4 times as many people say, I'm not going to give up 16 hours of my time to go to do that. What's the penalty for just being guilty of this? And so that's the rub on this, right? That where do we strike that balance in order to say we're serving to keep people out of the pipeline so they don't have restrictions? Because at some point, most people, Brandon and probation and everybody knows at some point, most people wake up in their life and say, I'm done with this, right? The choices that I was making at the times, whatever the trauma was in my life, I've addressed that. I now want to contribute. I But in order to get there, sometimes there are bumps along the way. So I don't have an answer, but I just share that story about what drug court failed, because that was a diversion model early on. And the idea of like, yeah, we're gonna force people into programming and force people to do things. People are resistant to that, because if it's too onerous, nobody wants diversion. Because if I'm 18 years old and I steal a 6-pack of beer from 7-Eleven, I would like you to get to go work at 7-Eleven for a couple of weekends. You sure think differently about what it means to be a store clerk, dealing with customers coming in and all the problems that go with that. But no judge is going to say, Simon, you stole a 6-pack of beer, you didn't want the version, I'm locking you up. That's not.
No, I think my thing is, I think the problem is we giving them too many damn choices. Who said that you get a choice as a 12-year-old to tell me that you don't want to do this?
Oh, now we're talking about kids though, right? We're
That's
talking
what I'm
about,
talking about. I'm talking about you.
And I was thinking about like, what does it look like for a young population?
This is what I'm talking about. I'm talking about juvenile.
okay.
I'm talking about juvenile. I'm not giving you a damn choice. You're not going home to your mama and saying, I don't want y'all. Send me juvenile. Take your butt over there and you're gonna take this old lady's bag. The same one you knocked over and stole her wallet. You're gonna war with her every day with a sign and say, I steal old lady purses.
Brandon, I have a problem with that now.
I don't know.
Hey, you've been very quiet.
Stealing old lady purses. Hide your wallet when I'm walking down the street. I don't know. I'm just saying. You don't get a damn choice. I got sticky fingers. When you walk into the store, Target, I want you to wear a shirt that says, I got sticky fingers. Security follow me. I don't know. I'm just kidding.
So I think one of the things though that maybe we need to look at, because I think there's different levels, right? There's different levels and there's different consequences and repercussions.
Exactly.
Depending on the level, there's different intensity of services.
Yes.
Depending on like what's
What
happening.
they did.
And so I think we could definitely take a deeper dive into, because honestly, there are a lot of programs active in the county that I have no idea like what's going on or what's available, or there may be something that's hidden that could be a good program in the county that could speak to some of the things that you're bringing up. Brandon, did you want to speak for?
Well, what I was writing down is, I think, one of the things we talk about this in juvenile context, is what that diversion model should be. And should there be individualized approach to each person that comes to diversion, and more specifically, targeted restorative justice, but targeted volunteer choice is kind of what I was writing down in terms of how do we create terms and conditions that are not so onerous that someone can choose to move away from this diversion program, but perhaps going to provide some perspective to that person to ensure that they recognize the harm that they might have caused, but also to prevent in that situation. I think, again, kind of what that's kind of, that is a discussion around what this framework looks like, both in the youth context and adult context. I think we're cases for that.
Yes.
Oh, just to add to the point about the prevention work and what programs may particularly be out there in terms of this. That's actually something that literally just yesterday, the Juvenile Justice Coordinating Council was like grappling with. So over the last year, pulled up the agenda from yesterday, over the past year of the juvenile justice crime prevention and dollars that come to the county, about 30% of it, close to about 27% of that budget was set aside to provide resources specifically for services for prevention. And it's I'll forget the levels, primary, secondary, for sure. There you go. in terms of the work we're trying to do in East County, we partnered with the Antioch Community Foundation to create what's called the Youth of the Promise Fund. And it really just started off as kind of a pilot to see if there was a way that we could get dollars out there to the community, to organizations that were either grassroots already knew of a lot of these young people in the community, and not just simply young people that were already justice system involved or at risk of justice system involvement. And from that, we were able to really garner a lot of, or at least a lot of attention. We were able to identify and for those organizations that are out there that actually their mission, their work really aligns perfectly with that, or they're wanting to expand in that way, that we did not have full knowledge of. So we hope to replicate that. Now, mind you, these were like smaller grants or mini grants up to about 10,000 per grantee. But it was at least a starting point, because our hope was that once we understand who was already out there that's looking to do this kind of work anyway, because they're having the same conversations in their own communities, then these are folks that we could eventually support in going after the bigger contracts, county contracts that really have their resources be expanded a lot further. So I think there's certainly opportunity, and there's definitely, I think this conversation certainly picked up even as they're hearing, okay, now prevention dollars are going out, but now what's the result of that? How do we know? And it's like, oh, research wise, that's a whole big, sort of complicated design to even understand the impact of prevention resources that are being utilized. But all to say, I think we're at really early stages of that kind of stuff and in conversation and that I think both bodies are certain.
That's really good to know, because when I was on the interview in the prevention intervention committee, we had such a hard time. We put out a survey and everything to try to get feedback from different organizations, and for whatever reason, no one. So I'm glad to know that there are actually some folks that apply for that.
The members are, I would say, for that PICE piece committee, who's really interested in looking into prevention work. They've invited a number of different organizations that they're just either hearing from, collecting information, and just wanting to understand what they do, how they operate, things like that. And then, like I mentioned, separately, the partner with the Community Foundation, who has that touch with some of those smaller grassroots groups, and push dollars out through them, but specifically to focus on prevention or youth at risk of justice involvement and or already involved. So I think we have some glimmers of hope. But I do think that is a great point that was raised at yesterday's meeting about how do we start to, we can push money at it and be sure that stuff is available, but then to build in, how do we know what sort of impact is an important question that.
The only thing I would add, is when dealing with the youth, is the support that they have at home. And how do we, figure that out? Because there are youth that will, take over and do what they can to be successful, but if they don't have that support at home to be successful, then, that kind of start fighting that, right? And, so being cognizant of what support they do start having, the fact that it's more factors than the results, right? Having that support at home.
Chris, did you hear me? Chris, you're on mute.
Yep. So 3 things, and I'm going to try to be brief because, according to you guys, with your overachieving selves, you want to try to get something done by the end of the year. So we're gonna need to talk about that. So number one, I would say objective 5 speaks to early intervention services along with restorative justice and all of this other stuff. So when Cheryl was talking about impact at like school to prison pipeline and sort of this prevention intervention versus sort of stopping recidivism, I hear that, and I think at least that's an entry point within the recommendations as they are written, where some of that work can fall and can be done, and that's why I think LaShante's work, which I hope she also has time to talk about before she has to go, is really important, and it will be really great to hear from them. Also, it almost was a like segue or setup for it, just depending on what the results are, but I don't want to put too much pressure on her. Just say it. The other thing is, I can't help but to think when I hear this talk about consequences and repercussions, which of course makes me think about Eddie Murphy, and a really great movie called Life. If you
I
haven't
just saw
seen
that
that,
show.
you should. I think it's funny, like that's one way to think about it, but that really what you're talking about is restorative justice. Because when we think about restorative justice, I think so often now we think about people sitting in a circle and talking, like that's what that is. But the philosophy behind restorative justice is that you have an impact and a role to play in your community. And so if you act in this antisocial way or commit some level of harm, that you have disrupted your place and your relationship with the community, and there's a need for you to do something to restore the community that's been disrupted, and also to restore your place in it, right, as a a safe and productive and caring member of it, right, who is responsible to the community for what you do. So I think part of what we're saying is that we would like to see the local criminal legal system at the entry points where that is possible take more of a restorative approach, not because necessarily it means there have to be these sit downs or circles, and there's nothing wrong with that. It just can't stop there. It has to go to, and then what needs to be done in order to restore this person, in order to restore your place in the community, and for you to begin the process of regaining the respect of the folks in the community that you've harmed or who witnessed it, right? And so I think that's an important point, and that can look a number of ways. I also champion the ideas, the third and last thing, champion the idea that that Cheryl was going into great detail about. I'm gonna tell you, Cheryl, we couldn't hear you at certain points, and I just want to point that out to you because you were very vocal about not being able to hear people in person the last time we were together. But boy, when you got into like what this program would operate like, oh, we could hear you loud and clear all of a sudden. It came across with thunder and passion. And I agree with that. I think maybe what we need to do, because I've thought literally of the same thing. I think you probably need some sort of administrative organization or pass through that's going to coordinate it, because we're talking about various different potential businesses and other organizations like that who they're not going to necessarily have dedicated staff to figure all of this stuff out. But if there is a point of contact that can make those connections and say, oh, it's a catalytic converter, go to Gus's truck shop, they can be the folks who want to sort of create that pathway or that that mentorship about the installing and removing of these and so on and so forth, right? Like you would just need like some entity to house that and sort of to operate as a switchboard to and also you need various folks in the community to actually buy into that and to believe that's the right thing to do. Which certainly I believe that something like that would be the right thing to do, but then folks have to have conversations about potential exposure liability, so on and so forth, and like how much do you really believe in that, how much are you really willing, how far are you willing to go, right, for your belief in it? And what, if any, sort of protections or guarantees can be made to you as far as, you know, how things may play out. Those are a whole bunch of like different details of it that, you know, I think would need to be built out. But I think that vision is like exactly like, you know, not even speaking professionally, but just speaking as an individual, something that I think about a lot and would love to see. There's just a need to kind of figure out those nuts and bolts, but I would love to see something like that in Contra Costa County and in any other county. And I think if it existed, right, at some level, it would be a model for like everywhere else, because I think we need that everywhere. And I'm gonna stop there. There are a couple other hands up, and then hopefully we can talk about the listening sessions, and then, you know, maybe talk a little bit about eligibility criteria too.
So real quick, Cheryl had something really quickly to say, then we're gonna go to Khadijah, and then I think Michelle also had her hand up. So, go.
Yeah, I thank you, Christopher. That's why I have the mic, the speaker right in front of my face, because I know my voice. Yeah, I'm cognizant that I have to soft voice. I did want to say, and I know we're in the listening sessions, but there was something that you were just reminding me of, is that I know when you mentioned Simon about the court, there was something that I know that works with you. Some of you may have had it in your college. You guys remember the college court? You have like you remember the college court? No. When you do that, like in the military has it, it's like a peer court. So in administrative, like a peer court. You get in trouble, like in HBCUs have it a lot, and any military school has it, a lot of private schools have it. You get in trouble, it's your peers who hold you accountable. So I always think about something similar to that, right? And I know in a lot of, I'm gonna say use the word ghettos, you ain't got to worry about the cops coming at you. You do something, there's certain crimes you commit in certain neighborhoods. The cops can't even get to you fast enough, because the neighborhood is going to hold you accountable. So it's certain things I think that in Brandon and Simon, I think that you can use that kind of influence, because peers, that peer-to-peer diversionary, right? They talk to each other. We use it a lot with like gang interventions where former gang members go to each other. But I think using that kind of tactic, and I know I want to talk about the open house when we talk about the listening sessions, but and then also the policing. But I want to hear what Ms. Khadijah has to say first. Khadijah.
Thank you all so much. This is very powerful conversation, and I just wanted to input just a little bit. I really am very interested in hearing about the youth listening sessions, as well as the peer-to-peer information. I feel like those two pieces already would just be able to highlight, because what I was thinking as you all were talking was that some youth just need to be met where they are. Some youth are having issues with food, I wrote down food, love, trust, and respect. Those are some things that youth don't even get, not in their own households, not when they go out into the world. So really focusing in on simple and small little steps like that will be so helpful. Just to give you all just a background about myself, like my mom was on here earlier, and she was discussing the issue of restorative justice that we need in our lives about losing property, but having eminent domain and the city that you live in come to take your home, and how that affected our family. It created me as one of the youngest people within my family around that time frame. I've lived through poverty, I've lived through drug addiction, I've lived through hunger, I've lived through stress, I lived through pressure. I've lived through a lot of things that was not being acknowledged just because I would be considered someone who's smart in school. But sometimes it's not about that. The kids who are thriving in school, they may be dealing with deep things just as well as the people who are acting out in school as well. So really what I would just love to see is just us meeting everybody where they are, whether they are excelling in school, whether they are not excelling at school and having these difficult issues. It's just like really meeting people where they are. As well as some of the other positive points that I was thinking about as you all were discussing was having things like mindfulness, after school programs, yoga, counseling, tutoring, like all of those things could be a part of restorative justice. And this can be done through consultants. So maybe not necessarily leaving that to local law enforcement or local community educators, but more so utilizing the work of consultants who you all will be able to kind of really check in on how the status of all these things are going. But I just really love and appreciate the conversations that you all are having. And ultimately, what we all need is a little bit more self-awareness in regards to the youth, in regards to adults who are needing this assistance. It's really just being able to just identify where you are in your life, what you've been through, and like where you want to go towards the future. And just want to say that I appreciate you all for having discussions like this, and really hoping as well to continue these important conversations. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Michelle, did you?
Yes, I wanted to piggyback off of Khadija as a former educator. I agree with what all you guys are trying to do. I appreciate the conversation as well. And I agree with Khadija when she says meet the children where they are. Also, if you guys work towards phrasing this whole objective that you guys have towards the parents or the guardians of the teacher, making it a marriage, phrasing it as a marriage. That's what I used to tell the kids and the parents in my school. I used to say, listen, we're in this for the long haul. This is a marriage between me and you guys, and we have to make this marriage work by working together. Kids like to play devil's advocate, right? Sometimes my kids come to me and ask me something and I say no, they go to their dad and he says yes, and I'm like, wait a minute. They can see everything. They know when people are not communicating. So having their guardians on board, having whoever their caregivers on board, and letting that's the buy-in, so that way they know that everybody is on the same page. I think these programs are very important for the youth. I think having a behavior hierarchy and letting them know what the behavioral consequences and that behavior hierarchy is, and also building relationships, because if you build relationships with all these children, you know where they are. You're able to meet them where they are. You're able to fulfill their needs, and then you can know how to move forward with them and their caregivers and everybody willing to help. And I also have to go, but I appreciate being part of this conversation. I would love to be invited to the next one. I have a lot more thoughts if you're willing to listen, especially when it comes to education, which I miss so dearly. And thank you for having me on this forum.
Before you go, I was just going to say to both of you, we are here every month. You know what I mean? It sounds like a place you guys need to be. So yeah, however we can coordinate that, let's do it.
I will send you both. I have your emails from the Q&A. I will send you both links to our agenda center so that you can sign up for all of the RJOB meetings that might be of interest to you.
Thank you.
You're
Have
welcome.
a beautiful day, everyone.
Yeah. Before we get ready to kind of close out, Stephanie, I saw you come on camera. I don't know if you had anything you wanted to bring up.
No, I really just wanted to echo what Khadija and Michelle just said. As a retired middle school teacher, it's interesting. I would say the same thing. I always felt like it was a three-pronged, approach. It was the parent, it was the student, and it was either the teacher or some extension of the school. And I was in I can't remember if it was this one. It was because there's subcommittees, but I was at one in person, and I did just talk about restorative justice and how important I think it is to start implementing in schools just across the board. I think it's so important to have non-punitive alternatives, and I really appreciate what Khadijah said. It's really about meeting the student where they are. You never know what a child is going through, and if you start making assumptions, I think sometimes it becomes very unproductive, if not downright, dangerous and cruel when that wasn't the intention. So I just wanted to echo all what was said, and just that I think it's really important for there to be, once these things are more teased out, to really do outreach to schools, because I think that would be a really good place. One other thing, and I don't want to overstep, this is a different subject, and I didn't know if it was appropriate to say it earlier, but I just thought for Ms. Moore, being in Richmond, I did think there was an an opportunity maybe to speak to somebody in Supervisor John Joya's office. He is the supervisor in that district for the situation that she and her family are facing. I heard somebody say it's not county. I realize that, but he might have resources that could help them. Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you. This was such a rich conversation. Before we try to move on, you can do more than that. Just because we can move it.
Okay, but I just want to say.
Okay.
I really like the conversation of referring around restorative justice and then thinking about prevention and intervention in the school. Because I strongly believe that if we start there and if we invest there and we really build solid systems that have human capacity and that can be sustained, I think we could get somewhere. And I think one of the things is that a lot of schools will say they're implementing RJ, but when RJ is not done the way it's supposed to be done, if you say to a school site in my district right now that, oh, you all should utilize restorative justice practices, you hear no, that doesn't work. Kids aren't being held accountable. There are no consequences. And I think we have to get back to what is RJ and what are the core tenets of restorative justice practices, because if we start to see behaviors and you're able to have students be accountable, right, to what they did, and then accountable to the community, and then you have logical consequences, kind of what you were speaking to earlier, right? And so if I go and I graffiti all over the school, right, you would think a logical consequence is you're going to repaint what you graffiti, right, and you're going to be accountable to your community in that way. So that's a simple example, but people have to be willing to allow folks to go through this kind of process. But what's currently happening is not that. So you may just hear a student sitting down in a circle, right? I'm talking to you, let's resolve it. Stephanie, don't say that again, and you guys apologize to each other. And then what the educators are saying, oh, there's no consequence. Anything happens, and then you guys are just talking it through. And then the next day, Lord forbid, Stephanie stabs you, right? And then it goes back to, oh, well, it was because you all did RJ and you didn't do a punitive response for that situation, and that's why Stephanie came back for the next, right? And so I just think that for me, it's disheartening to know that you have such a powerful strategy that could be implemented, but yet there is not enough human capacity, human resources, and it's not being sustained. So it's not being done correct, for lack of better words. And so it's difficult. I can come next time with more information about the listening circle, but can I just talk briefly about just kind of
hang on one second, one second, Chris, because I know we're gonna talk eventually about our next meeting, but can you please remind me to talk to you about youth work in Alameda County? And Fly. And then also I can't remember if we really, I know we've talked about restore, people have heard restore thrown about. But I don't know if we've actually kind of dived deep into what Restore is. So it may be good to talk a little bit about what Restore is, because it's way more than just sitting in a circle. And talking about feelings and things. So it may be good to think about that too. But Cheryl made me think about you for it, and I think that may be good for us to kind of think about and just look at that model. And I think that's it. Okay, so we're gonna close this out really quick and yes.
Just mentioned about, there is a community survey right now for all
Yes,
justice
yes.
practices, and we did hold a workshop actually at the Rise Center end of September. So right now we're just trying to gather feedback from the community at large on their sentiments and attitudes for embedding restorative responses, both just within the community as well as various systems. So if you don't have a copy of the survey, please put for those online, put your name and your email in the Q&A. We'll get it to you. So I'm asking everyone to fill it out yourself, then get your staff to fill it out. Then if you work with clients, certainly encourage them to fill it out, and then circulate it throughout your networks.
Thank you, Patrice. Okay, so we're gonna close this conversation out. And we're definitely gonna allocate some more time at our next meeting for LaShante to give some more detail about the listening session. But LaShante, if you could just kind of give a brief summary of the listening session that you did.
Yeah, so last year we embarked on a journey in our district to try to incorporate and get youth voice around major topics related to like school climate, how they feel at school, do you feel safe, do you feel supported, resources, like are there resources on campus, what would you like to see that's here, that's not accessible, and then there were questions around just what would make school a better place for you. And so what came out of doing listening surveys, and then at the end of the year, we take an overall like survey, all the students are given it from grades 3 to 12. What we found was meaningful participation was an area of need throughout our district. And so this is really getting at students feeling like school is a place that they can meaningfully participate, give their thoughts, really feel like they're a part of what they're learning. And then when we were starting to disaggregate it, what we were seeing is that young people during between the ages of like 15 and 18 have the lowest meaningful participation rates. And so then you can look a step further to see like behavior of 15 to 18-year-olds and look at certain school sites, and you saw that the meaningful participation was low, the system safety was low at sites, as well as the kind of rates of like suspension and rates of students being pushed out were higher. So that was something that came up. The other thing is that students simply said they want to be heard, right? So I think I've heard comments about it, just listening. I just want someone to ask me how I'm doing. I want someone to really feel like they care about me. When we started asking about like young people engaging in riskier behaviors, we saw a lot around it was, I just don't feel supported. Yes, there's services on campus, but I don't necessarily access them. If they're not required, I don't go to them. And then that out of school time is big, right? And so young people out of school, and these are young people between the ages of like 14 to 18, right? Meaningful programming outside of school that they can like relate to and get involved in. Otherwise they create their own activities, things that are fun, right, to do. And so that was like the big themes we did see in a lot of, or a subset of our schools where the perception of safety was very low, and then the chronic absenteeism was very high. So that just says, I don't feel safe, so I'm not here. And then you started to look at the behaviors that you see when students do come, and those were higher. So again, if you wanted to like try to create like a correlation, I don't feel safe at school. I don't feel like anyone here cares about me. I don't come to school, and then I'm getting into things outside of school. So that was big. And then the last thing I'll say is that, so we we took that data and then we wanted to like hear more. So we actually have another follow-up session in the second. And so what we're doing is all of our middle schools and high school, we're doing another listening session to dive deeper into some of the themes that we've heard. And this will be particularly targeting our students who have had disproportionate outcomes related to behavior, attendance, and then we identified some other subgroups. So we're trying to listen more to their needs. That will help inform, so school districts are on a different kind of cadence for funding. So we have our LCAP, which will be developed, and in that LCAP, that's how districts put together a plan and allocate funding to it. So from this session, we're hoping to get more data to then determine what services could be written in that plan. And we can put like money and training behind those services and that. So I have to go at 2:45 to get through 5 minutes.
I just have one quick question. Are you also planning on the kids survey?
Yeah.
The school site
Yeah.
to kind of compare.
Yeah, so meaningful participation was from our help. Yeah.
Would you say that the LCAPs are, since we were talking about working with schools, would you say LCAPs are the indicator of where potentially some both prevention and restorative justice related program or practice or what, or even capacity building is taking place?
Yeah, so every school district in California has to submit an LCAP, which is that local control accountability plan. And in that LCAP is like your plan for student achievement and your plan to address outcomes related to behavior, attendance, and academics. And so it's on a 3-year cycle. So every district right now should be in the midst of gathering data to create that plan. And then from the plan is like actionable steps. From the actions are where like money or different things are allocation. Thank you for the order.
Part of the thing that I'll say with West County is that, so community folks have been trying to be involved in like LCAP planning. And there was like high involvement before the pandemic.
Yes,
And then pandemic happened and
we mixed you up.
and now the involvement hasn't been as heavy. And so I do think that helps to shape what things look like as well. And so there's a push now for community to get more back involved in that process.
And I will say, so pre-pandemic, I would go to school board meetings and there would be public. The public was there, community organizations there, and everyone was like, we need to do restorative justice. We need to ensure that our students are getting interventions and it's not just a punitive approach. So we had so much, there was just community voice, right? It was there. And all these backers were there around doing something different. And then unfortunately the pandemic happened. And now you go to school board meetings and they're like empty. And this isn't a priority, right? And so it's kind of dwindled down. But if we could get that passion back, especially if Contra Costa County wants to adopt this framework, like what better place to implement it? So I'm just hoping the momentum builds again around it because, yeah, in some of our schools, if you all were to just come visit our schools, come see what they look like day to day, and see the conditions, see our young people in it, we really need to start.
I think I can do 2 things. Pandemic, your school board shut off a lot of public comment. So a lot of
And
public.
it's back.
I know, but it's at the end, and so it's like 1 o'clock in the morning, so a lot of people get upset, and then you can't, then they cut off the number of people that speak, so you only got 5 people speaking, people get upset. So I don't want to delve into that, but that's why you got a lot of people upset with the schools. The second thing is, I would ask you to please take into account what Ms. Khadija just said. Because something you said, the follow-up session is gonna focus on students who have this disruptive behavior from the background, and I would say to you things, not everybody who has, who looks like they're doing fine, is doing fine, as we know. Even coming through like, the pandemic or who, like, there are some people who look like they're thriving who are not, right? They're super high achievers. I have one, super high achiever, who like, is is an anxiety time queen, right? And I just remember her going through these issues. She was part of that big issue in Albany with the TikTok, not TikTok, it was Instagram scandal, and she was one of those students. But because she was so young, she was 12 in the ninth grade, right? She was so young, she just choked it all down, her and her friends. And she just put it all into work, into school. She's anxiety even going back to that school. She won't even go back into that school since she graduated. But she was like 15 at the same. So not everybody who looks like they're doing well academically or anything else is actually doing well.
Yeah,
So I would say, as Ms. Khadijah said, look at the other factors or talk to them. So I would say, I sometimes I think that's one of the things I think is we do a lot wrong. We not.
point of clarification, I just want to clarify, that isn't the only group we're targeting. Those are the students we did not hear from enough last time,
Okay.
in addition to, open invitations to students. And in addition to, we do these other like kind of surveys
Okay.
and sites self-select students as well. But those were the students we didn't hear enough from
Okay.
because they were not volunteering to participate in like a student.
I didn't know, what I heard her say that, I understood it. I was drawn to what she said.
Yeah.
Because I know the girls in Alliance for Girls say that same thing. Alliance for Girls is pretty big, and they say that.
Yeah.
Okay, so can we do about the?
Yes, thank you, LaShawn.
Thank you. I'm watching the flow.
Yes, open house.
Okay, so, Christopher, I think it's time when we coordinate with, the community engagement committee. We haven't had one of these in a while, and she was talking about the listening session, and I was thinking about this. Stephanie mentioned early on about, needing to engage the community in conversations on these definitions. We've done a lot of work in this subcommittee, but we haven't engaged the community in conversations on not just these definitions, but the work that we've done. Earlier today, Ms. Jill and I were at the briefing that East Big Mud gives. I go to a lot of these briefings for different, political organizations and, or, elected officials. And, I even hold my own, and I think it's a good idea to hold these kinds of things to the public, to let them know. So maybe hearing what you said about how there's this confusion about RJ. Maybe what we do is have probation and the district attorney's office and public defender's office and us have this community meeting. We used to have a series of meetings, if you guys remember, when we had a task force, right? And we used to have a series of meetings. We go to the public. I don't want one big meeting where we make them come to us in some obscure place. But maybe we have our series of meetings again, where we go to each part of the county and we talk to them about what we have been doing and talk to them. This is restorative justice. This is diversion for adults. This is the definition we're going to be using countywide. This is what we mean by it. Talk to us about what comes to mind when you hear this. And this is what we mean when it comes to juveniles. And we have JJC concept. And I think having that kind of thing for the community will be good. I also would like to see, as we've done this with ACLU, we had this session with, we call them four chiefs. And we had 4 chiefs from 4 different cities. And we sat with the community and we had the chiefs were very good about it, good sports about it. They sat up and they let the community ask them questions. And I think it's time that maybe we can hold that forum, our job forum on policing. And have the district attorney's office, the public defender's office, probation office, and some of the chiefs from the areas around Contra Costa County on a forum and let the community talk to them. Because what happened in Antioch, I'm glad we issued the letter, but I think the letter was not enough. And to just let it go without the community being able to talk and ask questions. And that is the best type of restorative justice that I can think of. Because there was something about, and again, Ms. Khadijah say, the love and trust and respect. If we want to restore trust and respect bilaterally between the community and policing, the community and probation, community and district attorney office, community and knowing what the public defender's office is there for. You can't do it unless we all get into a room and talk. And we can be the best purveyor of that as our job, because that's what people come to us for. And this is why we are on this committee. I would like to see us do a series of that. If we can make that recommendation from the diversion community, and the diversion committee to the larger group. This is what I want to say. I know you heard me that time, Christopher. That's it.
Thank you, Cheryl. What's my mistake?
It's time to go. I got a 3:00 meeting, but they'll start calling me if I don't make it.
Okay, so we didn't get to our full agenda, which is okay. Well, no, we got out early last time. Like,
I wasn't here. I wasn't here.
So, put your-
I couldn't hear nothing.
So we had a really rich conversation, so I appreciate everyone that contributed to our conversation today. And I feel like we have a lot that we kind of need to go over and figure out how we're gonna coordinate and get to this work. But so we got a little bit of the listening session, the West County listening session. We'll get more for our next meeting. We'll also move the diversion criteria, adult diversion criteria. And hopefully we'll also be able to set a meeting with that work group to talk about youth criteria, and then be able to talk about that at our next committee meeting. And then I think that's it. I appreciate you all so much. Thank you all over Zoom for showing up, and I hope you come to our next meeting. And meeting is adjourned.
14:56.
Oh.
2:56.
Forgive me with that military time. Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, and I need to make my meeting on time. Where's that?